Hi, and welcome back to Teachings. And have you ever wondered in John chapter 8 where they caught the woman in adultery and they brought her to Jesus, and you hear the famous "let he's without sin cast the first stone," but it says that he wrote something in the dirt while they were questioning him. Have you ever wondered what he was writing in the dirt? Now, this is a very age-old question, and you have tons and tons of scholars thinking they know the answer and answering this way and answering that way. But does the Bible really tell us what he was writing? Let's find out, because this is exciting, because not only does the Bible give us hints and clues about what he wrote, but it also fulfills prophecy. Whoa, 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 whoa. Yes, I said this actually fulfills prophecy. Whoa, I can't wait to get to it, and I know you can't either, so let's get to it and dive into it. So like I said, John chapter 8, and no particular version, I just picked one at random. New King James is what I'm using. You can use whatever version you like. Either way, we're going to get to the same result. So let's get to it. John chapter 8. And we're going to be starting verse 1. But Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Now, early in the morning, notice how it said early in the morning. That's going to be important here in just a second. He came again into the temple. So where was he? He was actually inside the temple. And all the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. Then the scribes and Pharisees brought to him a woman caught in adultery. All right, time out, because every little detail is important. Notice how it says the scribes and Pharisees. Why did it mention both specifically? Why didn't it just say the Pharisees or religious leaders or whatever? Because they wanted to have a record. The scribes would record everything that happened and everything that went on, and any decision that was made by the Pharisees, and any consequence or any rendering, the scribes would write it down. So they'd have a historical record of it. So you know they were trying to trap him. So they brought the scribes with them so they could record what was going on. All right, let's continue. Woman caught in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, or in the middle, and I'm going to time out right here. You got to know what's going on culturally and historically. In the temple in those days, in Jesus' day, everybody sat around the sides inside the temple. And the person doing the teaching would be in the Moses seat. It was actually a seat they called the Moses seat, where they would be, in I guess nowadays terms would be the preacher's seat. That would be like in the middle, talking to everybody all around. So the woman was brought in the middle, and everybody was all around. And said to him, Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery, in the very act. That is important. That specific phrase is important, and we'll see how important it is in just a minute. She was caught in the very act. Now Moses said in the law, commanded us that such should be stoned. What do you say? This they said, testing him, that they might have something to which accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger. All right, hold on, time out. There's so much in here to unpack, so let's get to it little by little. First it says in the law of Moses that she should be stoned. Yes, that is true, but there's more to that, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But I want to get to, it says right here, he wrote on the ground with his finger. His finger. Specific words. Why did it not just say he just wrote on the ground? Why did it say his finger? All right, I'm going to give you a couple of dots, and then we're going to connect them all, and then it's going to blow your mind. So here we go. We have to go back to, since they said the law of Moses says, then let's go back to the law of Moses. All right, we're going to be looking at Exodus 31, verse 18, starting at 18. Exodus 31:18. It says, "And when he had made an end of speaking with him on Mount Sinai, he gave Moses 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets of stone, written with," here it is, "the finger of God." New King James Version. The finger of God. Are you starting to see it? So in Exodus 31:18, you have Moses going up to Mount Sinai, receiving the 10 Commandments written by the finger of God. Remember the book of John, in chapter 8, the whole book of John is trying to show you that Jesus is the Messiah and Jesus is God. Whoa, wait a minute. You're telling me that Jesus's finger wrote the 10 Commandments? Wait a minute. Hold on. There's more. Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 10. "Then the Lord delivered to me 2 tablets of stone written with the finger of God, and on them were all the words which the Lord had spoken to you on the mountain from the midst of fire in the day of the assembly." Whoa, let's look at this. How does John, the Gospel of John, start out? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's right. The Word was God. What does it say here in Deuteronomy? It says, "the finger of God, and on them were all the words of God," of the Lord. Is it possible that the finger of God was our Messiah, Jesus himself, writing the tablets of stone, the 10 Commandments on the tablets of stone for Moses? What does it say? Why would it use in Exodus and Deuteronomy the same exact phrase, the finger of God? I mean, it could have just said, Exodus and Deuteronomy could have just said, God wrote the 10 Commandments and been done with it. But it specifically says, the finger of God. And here in John chapter 8, it says, Jesus wrote with his finger. The same one that wrote the 10 Commandments. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So what was he writing? Let's get to that. It says let's continue on down. Let's continue on down. We left off, they were trying to trap him. All right, first of all, let's look at the trap itself. A trap is when you can't go forward and you can't go backwards. So if he says yes, then they got him. If he says no, they got him. So let's look at both sides. All right, if he says yes, you're right. The law of Moses says she should be stoned to death. Then he, Jesus, himself would be violating the law. What? That's right. He would be violating the law, and we'll get to that. I'm just setting the trap first. So if he said yes, he's violating the law. If he says no, she does not deserve to be put to death, or does not to be stoned, then they could say, ha, You're a false teacher. You don't keep the law of Moses. You are no good. You are definitely not the Messiah. You are not the Son of God, because you cannot even keep the law of Moses. So there's the trap. Now, what were they talking about? Leviticus 20, verse 10, it says, "The man who commits adultery with another man's wife, he who commits adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and adulteress, shall surely be put to death." Whoa, 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 whoa. Clearly states, caught in the act of adultery, both he and she shall surely be put to death. There's the trap. They just brought her. They didn't bring him. So if he says, yes, she should be killed, he'd be violating this law right here in Leviticus 20:10, because they both shall die. Do you see that? Which is the whole gist of what we're going to cover next. Let's keep going. All right. His finger. Verse 7. So they continued asking him. He raised himself up and he said to them, He who is without sin among you, let him throw the first stone at her. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. Wait a minute. Verse 8 does not say with his finger. In verse 6, it said his finger. Now here in verse 8, it doesn't say with his finger. It just says he wrote on the ground. Why the difference? And what did he write with his finger in verse 6? And what did he write in verse 8? That's where we're getting to. That's where we're going. He stooped down again and wrote on the ground. Then, verse 9, those who heard it, being convicted by their conscience, some say ashamed, we'll get to that, went out one by one, beginning with the oldest even to the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in his midst. When Jesus has raised himself up and saw no one was but the woman, he said, Woman, where those who accuse you? Has no one condemned you? She said, No one, Lord. And Jesus said to her, Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. All right, there's the story. We've laid the story. Now let's go back and look at the pieces. He stooped down again and wrote on the ground. Those who heard it were convicted by their conscience, and they were ashamed. Here is where it fulfills prophecy. You say, what? Yes. Here is where it fulfills prophecy. Now, before I get to that, remember I said the trap, right? The trap was if Jesus says, yes, she has to die, he himself would be committing sin because they didn't bring him. That's why they all left. Because they knew when he said, let any of you is without sin throw the first stone, they couldn't. Because all of them were in sin because they didn't bring him. They only brought her. Wait a minute. All of them were in sin because they didn't bring him. They weren't fulfilling the law. Did you catch that? That is mine. It's a totally different teaching than what we've been understanding this verse. But that's why they couldn't throw any stones, because they weren't really keeping the law. Now here's the fulfillment of prophecy. Here it is. Here it is. Jeremiah 17:13. Now remember what just happened. They couldn't throw a stone because they were violating the law. They were sinning by bringing just her, not him, both. All right? Then they left one by one. What did Jesus write the second time? fulfilling prophecy. Jeremiah 17:13, O Lord, the hope of Israel, all who forsake you shall be ashamed. Those who depart from me shall be, here it is, written in the earth, because they have forsaken the Lord, the fountain of living waters. There it is, the fulfillment of prophecy and the answer to the question, what was he writing? It says here, they were ashamed, and their names shall be written on the earth, or in the earth, because they departed from God. They were in sin. What was he writing? Their names. I told you, is that not the best thing you've ever seen? With the fulfillment of prophecy, and it answers the question, he was writing their names. Now, let's go back to the first part. What did he write the first time in verse 6 with his finger? It says the finger of God. Probably the same thing he wrote on the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt commit adultery. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Or he could have written Leviticus 20:10 that says that you have to bring the adulterer and adulteress. He could have written either one. He could have written both. He could have written thou shalt not commit adultery, and the adulterer and adulteress shall surely be put to death. Because when they saw what he wrote with the finger of God, his own finger, that's when they were ashamed. That's when their conscience bothered them, because they knew they were sinning. And that's when he started writing down their names one by one, and they left one by one. So the answer is, what did he write the first time? Thou shalt not commit adultery, or Leviticus 20:10. You got to bring them both. What did he write the second time? Their names in the earth, because they were ashamed and they departed from God. Jeremiah fulfilled the prophecy. Not only does it answer our question, it fulfilled the prophecy. Now do you get a better understanding? Now do you get a better revelation of this whole parable? Well, grown up thinking, well, let him who's without sin. Well, we're all without sin. That's why they didn't cast the first stone. No. They didn't cast the first stone because their very action of bringing just her and not both of them was sin itself. And they tried to get Jesus in that same sin by trying to trap him with that question. But he didn't take the bait, because the finger of God that wrote the Ten Commandments wrote in the dirt his law, his way. And then he wrote again their names, because they were ashamed and they forsake the Lord God. So I hope that answers the age-old question. I hope that gives you a new revelation. I hope that gives you new understanding about what went on here, about the woman caught in adultery. But the whole point is there's grace, there's mercy. Go and sin no more. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you receive notifications of any more videos that come, and most importantly, share it with someone you know that needs to hear it.